Okay, we're on, and we are here, myself and LJ. Another conversation about the third of the three C's we're discussing, which we're discussing the issue of remote leadership, what it's like to be a leader when you're managing a team remotely. And one of the issues that we wanted to talk about, and specifically our subject for today, is culture. How, as a remote leader, do you continue to help the culture of an organization thrive? What's working, what's not working in terms of being a leader of culture? So that was our topic for today, right, LJ?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Lou.
So tell me about your thoughts around this, and what's been your experience in working with remote leaders and keeping the culture fires burning at their organizations?
I think, it's a challenge nowadays, because I think you connecting via only this medium, the Zoom, or any other virtual reality, makes no contact. You have to be more aware of body language. And you have to take more in before you really know what's going on.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, I think I can't pinpoint it, but the coffee corner conversation to arrange things without having all kinds of meetings is maybe far more effective than always looking into a screen.
Yeah, what I found with some of my clients is their culture supports the idea of those coffee corner conversations, or informally meeting over lunch, or a snack during the middle of the day. So the physical environment of the workplace is set up such that you can plop down and have these conversations together just informally and unscheduled.
Yeah.
And that's just inherent to the culture. And now, being a remote leader, it isn't as spontaneous as that. You have to sort of plan it. You have to set up the Zoom thing. I think there are some organizations, of course, that have Slack and some of these other instant messaging services, but it's different than having someone plop their lunch tray down next to you and have a conversation.
Yeah. And also, now that people work out of home, they have more, there's a whole different playing field, because it's and work and home. Maybe kids to manage, a husband or a wife or a partner. It's a whole different dynamic.
It's all mushed together, huh?
Yeah.
So you have the
where are your boundaries, for instance?
Yeah, like
working.
You have the culture of your work and then the culture of your home, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they slosh. Yeah. They slosh back and forth. So have you found any, like one experience I had with a client was there was a lack of a particular characteristic of a culture that they had to sort of implement, because now they were doing work remotely. The specific trait was accountability. So they hadn't when they were all working together physically, because they could just pop down at each other's desk or kind of shout over and check in and all that. There was apparently less accountability than now. Now there's a commitment and accountability, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And as a leader, you have to keep that going and support that. Have you had any experience like that?
Well, not with my clients. I have another observation I hear is that it's very difficult for or challenging for people to do those calls, to do the Zooms, and to be on every moment of the day.
Yeah, it's tiring. Yeah, it's tiring, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and also the where they, how do you say this, where you divide the good from the bad,
Mm.
is where people, I heard a story about a company that via Zoom in
Uh-huh.
one call fired 461 people.
Whoa. Wow. Via Zoom.
Yeah, and that's quite
Wow.
a, I can imagine it's quite hard to reach out to 461 people, but it's also about how do we do it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like what, when we have to make these tough calls and tough decisions, how do we do it in a way that's through a different medium, but it still represents or is still a hallmark of the culture,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and do it in a manner that's compassionate, especially if you have to deliver bad news.
yes,
That's tough. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about in our last session about connection, you
yeah,
know, and a lot of that has to do with what caliber and what level of connection do you have with the people
yeah,
you're leading.
yeah. So
Um,
what culture do you have, and how can you maintain it? It's a,
that's right. That's right.
it's a
And then
trick.
there are other pieces of a culture. For example, you know, going out for drinks after work,
Yeah,
or doing a physical activity together, or doing a community service project together, which are all hallmarks of an organization's culture. And you as a leader are responsible for keeping that going. But how do you do that when you're all working in a virtual environment?
yeah, that's a very interesting remark, Lou. Um, we have here now one of these, uh, no, not companies, but non-for-profits,
Uh-huh. Nonprofit.
where
Uh-huh.
we can participate in doing good,
Mm-hmm.
and they do it virtually. So
Mm.
they connect with all kinds of people to make a virtual project that will be a fundraiser.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And I guess as a leader, how do you go about promoting participation
Yes,
when
yeah,
it's like that, you
and
know?
commitment.
Yes. And it's important to do that because it's part of what the culture, what the organization supports. So you don't want that to die while we're in this virtual environment for however long it's going to be. So yeah, it's a matter of being inclusive, I guess. One of my friends and I were talking about the happy hour, the virtual happy hour. And so let's say your culture supports going out for drinks after work. It's a group, you're all talking, but you know, there's side conversations, things like that. If you're having a virtual happy hour on Zoom, it's difficult to have side
Yeah,
conversations
yeah,
and people talk over each other. And so what happens to the one person that's over in the corner sipping his beer but not saying anything because everybody else is talking? Whereas if you were at a bar, he would have his own side conversation and he would be included and be participating.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's I'm not that I'm here to promote, you know, happy hours, but
Virtual happy hours.
if it's part of a culture, you know, or just physically doing things
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
that's a lot of workplaces. That's what people do. So if we're coaching leaders as leading remotely, what are some ideas that you have where they can do that and also continue to honor the characteristics and the components of a company's culture?
I would say, I would ask them, what are the components that make your culture?
Yeah.
So, and what are you able to translate into virtual reality?
Yeah.
And I had a talk with somebody else about, I think in this time it's also very interesting as a leader to lean back,
Ah, and what
not
do
to
you mean
lean
by that?
in,
Uh,
but to lean back and observe what's going on and giving people room to maneuver and also room to, yeah, to express themselves and to be able to be part of the culture.
mm-hmm. And are you finding that that's hard for some people? I think that might be a challenge, huh? In
Yeah,
this kind
because
of
you're not in
uncertain
control.
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
In an uncertain time, you kind of want to lead in and want to take charge and control. But I love what you're saying about leaning back and see what happens, see what ideas bubble to the surface, huh? Yeah. That's interesting, because that might not be a hallmark or a characteristic of a culture, but it might be something that evolves out of this experience that becomes important to a culture, you know?
Yeah, so you get a more involvement of your co-workers, of your colleagues.
Yeah.
Because of creating space for others.
Yeah.
And especially now, I think that's very important, and it will be in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And also, to me, this is showing some organizations that the culture can tolerate working remotely and working physically apart. You could still honor the culture, but also and keep driving goals forward, keep driving the mission of the organization forward. All of those pieces are still thriving, even in this contrived environment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see what happens long term in terms of what people choose to do about keeping things. Will we stay virtual? As we ease back into whatever the new normal is, what will remain and what will go away?
Like a hybrid form.
Yeah. I wonder if it's making cultures more efficient by working this way, by working virtually.
No,
what do you think?
I don't know. I think I might tend to say yes.
Me too. And I think it's because people aren't having to go into an office and physically work in an office.
Yeah.
They are working at home, and they're able to have a little bit more control over how they do their work. So I don't know about you, but some people I know are night owls. So they're more efficient at night, or they might get on a project and just work steadily on it for 12, 14 hours and don't want any interruptions. Whereas if you're at an office, you know, and particularly open office environments, you have interruptions all the time.
Yeah.
So maybe it's making people work better. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, or what you say is the difference between day people and night owls.
Yeah, not me. I'm not the night owl.
No, but it makes it's also part of a planning process.
Yeah.
So maybe you can ask somebody who's a night owl, can you help me here so we can have it ready tomorrow, or vice versa.
Yeah, good idea. So you partner, you know, you figure out who's the daytime and who's the nighttime, and then in 24 hours it's done. That's great. Yeah. Huh. Any more thoughts for you on culture?
Well, I think it's besides it being a challenge as it was in the olden days, it is even more so now.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to be following this.
Yeah. So we've talked about communication. We've talked about connection, and now we talked about culture. And for my money, it feels like all three of them are completely intertwined. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so our challenge as coaches, helping leaders who are leading remotely to pick apart and really emphasize the aspects that are working well, and how do you go about diminishing the aspects of those three that aren't working so well. So yeah. What do you suppose our next C should be?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know. We could change the letter, you know. It doesn't have to stay C. I don't know why we landed on C, but
no, I have a blank at the moment, so for me it's a B.
Yeah, it's a B. Blank. Okay.
Blank. No, I'm sorry. I don't know.
Well, I've enjoyed talking with you about these, and we'll come up with another topic to continue our conversations together. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Well, thanks, LJ, and happy coaching.
You too.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, dear.